That's the quintessential problem with time blocking and calendar management
Yeah.
is that it's more of an art than it is a science. You can time block and put, okay, I'm going to do all my creative work in this batch, and I'm going to do all my meetings at this batch. I'm going to put them right next to each other, bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
But the reality is, a lot of times your life revolves around other people's schedules,
Yeah.
and getting your cycles synced is quite difficult. And so you end up in that situation where you have a call at 2, another one at 4, another one at 6, and you're like, well, how do I get work done between these calls? Because there is, this what's called attention residue,
Yeah.
or just you think about the inertia cost of what they call multi switching or task switching, right? Every time you task switch, there's about 15 minutes of attention residue where your mind is still sitting on the thing that came before. So, that you're on a 30-minute call, you get off of it, and then you're like, okay, got an hour before this next thing. Well, it's going to take you 15 minutes before you can even get into the flow of that next thing. And there's high resistance because you're very distractible during that period because your mind's still sitting on the previous thing, but you're trying to move it forward towards this thing. And when there's that push and pull between what your brain wants to do and what it's actually doing, then you go into this cognitive dissonance where nothing actually happens. Right? Like that's what most often occurs in that situation where like, I'm going to be productive for this hour. You look up 30 minutes later, you're like, I just kind of spun my wheels for 30 minutes. I got frustrated. So then I found myself on Instagram doing nothing. Right. And I was like, well, maybe I just need to reset for a bit, because sometimes you're like, maybe I just need to refresh my mind and I'll come back to it. The whole hour's gone. Right. And so the question is, and like, okay, what do we do in those scenarios? How can we actually get shit done? A couple of rules that I generally try to follow is to, batch meetings back to back to back, because meetings are an easy one to transition from. You're already in meeting mode, you're already in meeting mode, already in meeting mode. So never try to go from one. You want to batch like tasks with like activities. So if I am doing a creative task and I know I need to write a newsletter, I need to write a script for a YouTube video, I'm going to do those back to back, right? I'm not going to do a creative task of I'm going to do a video and then I'm going to write for a little bit and then I'm going to go back and do another video. I would do video, then write, right? Or I try to structure my week in a way, and that's generally how I think about my schedule. Isn't in the context of a day, but in the context of a week. And I think that's where a lot of people get kind of tripped up, because in the context of a day, you can map out your perfect day, but a lot of little things can get in the way to create volatility. One person comes in, they have a request of you. Now you have to push this meeting, that meeting, the other meeting, and the whole day is kind of shot. And that happens quite often. And so you can leave that day feeling like, oh, I wasn't a very productive day, or I didn't get what I wanted to get done today. But if you think about it in terms of the week, now you can say, okay, I have all these meetings. How can I batch those on Tuesday? Is there a way I can pull them all to this same time? Okay, I have this day where I have to do editing. Is there a way that I can pull it all to this time? Right? And then when the calendar gets screwed up, you go, cool, that's all right. I have this second bucket later this week. I'll just move it back over there and I'll get it then. Right? And so you think about your time blocking your schedule in the context of a week rather than a day, because the day has too much volatility. It's too small of a data point. But the bigger your data point, the less those disruptions, less big those are. Right? Because one hour disruption in the middle of a 10-hour workday, that's 10% of your day. But if you spread that over a whole week, say a 60-hour week, then that 1 hour is, oh God, I don't even want to do that math. It's much less. We don't do math in public for that very reason. Dodge that bullet. But so like that's how you think about it. That one distraction in the context of a day or an afternoon, very big. In the context of a week, very small. So that you think about, how do I structure this calendar for the week rather than for the day? And the other side of this then is, as much as you can, to hold yourself accountable to the task that you're doing in that moment. But you do this by knowing yourself. You need to have self-awareness to say, I am the type of person that, despite my best interest, or like my best intent, when I get off that meeting, I have a hard time getting into the flow of this next thing. I just know that about myself. And so what can I do to move balls forward during that time that's easy? And then you put the tasks in there that maybe aren't the most important tasks, but they are tasks that you could keep moving forward, keep momentum going. And this we talk about this all the time, where it's like you should always prioritize the most important things. But the reality is, like, the most important things are the most important because they're hard. And you have to understand your energy flows throughout the day. You can't just do hard thing, hard thing, hard thing, hard thing, hard thing, hard thing. You have to build up to that. Otherwise you will break yourself, right? Like you have to understand these ultradian rhythms throughout the day where, and there's a lot of science behind this. This is really interesting where it shows you go through these 90-minute cycles where you're high energy, low energy, high energy, low energy, and it lasts for about 90 minutes. It's called an ultradian rhythm. And that's within the context of your full circadian rhythm, which is a 24-hour rhythm, right? So understanding I can only ever be high energy for 90 minutes at a time, and then 90 minutes need to reset. 90 minutes high, 90 minutes to reset. So is a meeting a high energy request for you, or is it a reset? Some people are different. For me, it's a high energy. I'm not an extrovert. And so meetings require me to be at a higher energy state. Coming out of that, what's easier? What's at a low energy state? Well, that's admin stuff. That's emails. I can do that stuff. It doesn't take any energy. But I wouldn't want to come out of a meeting and straight into writing a script, straight into another meeting, straight into recording a video. Some people can do that. I know myself, that would burn me out. And what would happen then is the quality of my output during those times would degrade. And so it's better for me to do less but better during that period and say, okay, I'm going to show up at my best for these 2 meetings. And here I'm going to get less done. And that's just the reality of the situation. Right. And sometimes just knowing that about your day can be really helpful. And instead of trying to stack it with super high important output stuff and saying this is going to be a great day because I'm going to move all of these crazy balls forward, you look and say, what are the 2 to 3 meaningful balls that need to get moved forward today? And say, okay, I'm going to make sure those balls move. And if I can get any other balls to move too, that's going to be great. But I'm damn well sure I'm going to move those balls. So that's how I think about it. Small stuff can always be fitted in later. It's like, that analogy that they use, you probably seen the demonstration. The guy will have a bucket, he'll put it on the table, and he's like, okay, if I put in the sand first, and then I put rocks and pebbles in, and then I try to put the big boulders in, there's no room, right? But if I first put the big boulders in, and then I put the pebbles in, and then I put the sand in, and then I put the water in, there's room for it all, right? Big stuff goes in first. And so when it comes to planning the week, I don't worry about putting in the sand and the water. That shit's going to figure itself out. That's going to flow between the cracks. I want to make sure that I'm putting the time in for the big balls and saying, okay, on Tuesday, that's my podcast recording time. This is my scripting time. On Wednesdays, this is this time. This is the other time. And then everything works around those. And then I know that the big balls, the big rocks for the week are always on the calendar and getting moved forward.
Okay. And you don't really worry about the details in those blocks
until it's the day before. Yep, I do what's called best day prep. So at 6 o'clock every night, I sit down, look at my calendars, and I prep the next day. And I lay out what would the best day look like. And here's the thing is like you lay it out with the best of intentions, but you know that there's going to be a margin of error. And so it's like this is what the best day would look like. It's rarely going to look like that. So you have to know then on the calendar what you can push and pull and say, okay, if I have to sacrifice something, it's probably going to be that. But these are the high priority things. I know I'm not going to sacrifice that. And you can color code it too. So you can see your week at a glance and be like, oh, all the red stuff, those are big rocks. Boom, boom, boom. Those don't get moved. Those are going to get done. All the yellow stuff, those are the smaller things that are important. I'm going to make sure that those are getting done every day, but it doesn't really matter what time every day they get done. And then, or maybe green, you could be your big blocks. Yellow is like smaller stuff. And then red is like the tiny stuff where it's like, if it gets in, great. If it doesn't, it's shiftable. It doesn't really matter, right? But usually my calendar will be I don't necessarily even need to color code it because you can tell based off of the size of the block, how important the activity is to me. Because you can tell what somebody prioritizes, what they find important based off of looking at their calendar and looking at their bank account. Look at where they spend their time and look where they spend their money. If they say something's a priority, but they're not spending money on it and they're not spending their time on it, it's not really a priority, right? People say this all the time, like, oh, family is the most important thing. It's like, okay, show me on your calendar. Show me where you scheduled your family time. Show me on your calendar or show me in your bank account, where are you spending money on this? Not just maybe you say my priority is I want to become a better public speaker, right? Cool. Show me on your calendar where you're making time for that every single day. Show me on your bank account where you're spending money to improve. Do you have a coach? Are you spending time on courses? Did you buy a book? If you're not spending money and time on the thing, you're not prioritizing. It's not actually important to you. right? And so your calendar, as you're looking at your week, it should be a reflection of that too, where the biggest blocks, you go, those are important things. If your biggest blocks are shit activities, you're doing it wrong.